Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And if you like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. Please help keep those likes higher than the dislikes. But over to the point. I raised the video the other day discussing Patrick, the world's strongest vegan, who basically got called out by Brian Shaw, who was extremely polite about it and challenged him to, hey, why don't you show up at my gym and just do whatever lift you want to do, because Patrick basically tried to claim his world records. Now, I've had a lot of people in the comments say, well, he holds this and that. Guys, those aren't real world records that people are competing on. Any world records this guy has are basically little small exercises that no one at the top level is actually competing on, therefore he just kind of does them. He's done them in smaller contests, and any of the stronger guys, if they just actually did the event, then the first time there would be like 50 guys who would beat him. You need to understand that difference. That's, as someone else pointed out, that's like saying, hey, I want to set the world record in the 101 meter dash. Not the 100, but the 101 or the 105. And then you go run it and you have the best time in the world. Until a real sprinter comes along and actually decides to test on the 105 instead of the 100. See how that works? These are not real records. Not the same thing. No one's competing with you. If you're the first one to do something or only 5 people in the world have even tried it, it's not the same thing. We're talking about stuff where they actually do regularly in contest against each other. So that was brought up, and then people brought up the whole height and weight thing. Well, what are they talking about? They're talking about a squat. Patrick said, well, I think I could challenge Brian to a squat. Now, a lot of people who did this is either intellectual dishonesty on the part of the vegans, or it's vegans not knowing anything about the strength world. When we compare lifters of different heights, this is why we have Wilks score. Okay? That's why we have Wilks score. Weight classes were invented because of height. And a lot of people don't know that, and there are many coaches out there who will say that, because it's always been understood in any sort of strength sport. And that includes fighting sports, because those are strength sports. They have weight classes. Weight classes are height classes in disguise. Why? Because if you max out the amount of frame that your body will hold without drugs, it's going to be limited by your height. If you're on a given amount of substances, the limits of your body are still going to be based upon your height. That's what's going to determine how much muscle your frame will hold. Well, we need weight classes because more muscle equals more strength. Conversely, taller guys are going to be stronger than shorter guys. They're going to be stronger than shorter guys. A lot of people who argue against that have never worked with real athletes. Okay? Here in the real world, that is true. On your internet, little silly world, that may not be true. But in the real world, that is true. Taller people are stronger. Why? Because they're going to outweigh you by 50 pounds. All right? They're going to outweigh you by 50 pounds. You take a 6'4" guy and a 5'6" guy, and you have them both lift on the same program, side by side, on the same team, same strength program for 5 years. The tall guy is going to be a hell of a lot stronger. And he's going to weigh 80 pounds more. Well, that's why. Okay, we have weight classes because of height. What do I tell people? You want to be the shortest, leanest guy in your weight class. If you're an inch shorter with 1% less body fat than everybody else in your weight class in powerlifting, you're going to win 9 out of 10 times. Okay? It's that simple. Muscle mass relative to your height, what determines your strength. It's the biggest factor. Other stuff matters, but that is top of the list. And there's plenty of research confirming that. So how do we deal with Patrick? Well, we have a Wilks calculator. And we have Wilks for a reason. Why? Because body weight multipliers work the other way. Okay, absolute strength favors the tall guy. Okay, the 6'5" guy wins on absolute strength. Just how much weight can you lift? He's going to win. If they've been training, both guys have been training for a decade straight really hard and correct, tall guy beats you. The short guy wins on the multiplier. When you multiply it times body weight, 5'3" guy will beat you every single time. You cannot beat him. Okay, any guy who is way below average height, let's say a guy is 5'3", and he's been training hard for 5 years under a good coach, nobody in the world is beating him at body weight multipliers. Okay? He doesn't even have to be the best in his class. Nobody at average height or tall is going to beat him on that squat X times your body weight. He wins every time. Okay? That's not a good method either. Wilks score was invented to give us cross class, and it's how we compare lifters. So if you want to compare their relative squats, because that's what we're talking about. How much muscle and strength has he been able to stack on his frame as a vegan versus an omnivore relative to his frame size? Okay, because this is what's going to determine mostly your muscle mass is going to determine what you squat. We'll run their numbers. Plug them into a Wilks. Brian wins. And that's assuming we go off of their best listed stats. Now, I've seen Patrick squats, and I don't honestly think Patrick at any point has ever actually squatted what he claims. Because I watched his supposed 370, and I counted the plates. I know what a red weighs. I know what a blue weighs. I know what that black bumper weighs. Okay. He didn't have 370 on there. I watched him miss 320, which I said before the squat was higher than giraffe pussy. So if we give him the 360, which is listed on his Wikipedia page, we take his listed height, his listed best squat, and it's with wraps. I had someone try to say, "Let's sleeves." No, that counts as wraps, guys. Versus Brian's best squat. Both we're assuming both in wraps. So we give them the same category. You plug their height, not their height, you plug in their body weight, listed body weight in kilograms, their squat in kilograms, who wins in a Wilks? Brian Shaw still wins by a considerable margin. Now, I think Patrick's max squat is closer to 320 kilos, not 360, in which case Brian absolutely crushes him. But even the 360 at his 116 kilo body weight, you plug it into a Wilks calculator, what do you have? Brian still wins on relative strength. Because that scales weight in, scales body weight in. And the body weight has to be scaled in because of height. That's the reason that exists. Because normally, if a guy is just bigger and stronger than you, we don't care. All right, that's getting silly. If two guys the same height and one of them has 20 pounds of muscle on you, he is obviously going to be stronger than you. Right? He is obviously going to be stronger than you. It becomes hard to compare because of frame size, so we can determine their relative strength. So that's why we have the weight classes, and that's why we invented Wilks score, to account for that. It's how we compare athletes in different classes. Okay? Plug in your weight and your numbers. Done. Brian still beats him. Brian beats him on absolute strength and on relative strength on a Wilks calculator. Either way you want to go. And it's just like I had someone point out, they said, "Well, didn't you mention like Clarence versus Jamie Lewis?" Yeah, I did. We wanted to compare someone who is a quote-unquote carnivore, but he's not really a carnivore, he eats plants, who has always promoted a heavy carnivorous meat-based diet, versus Clarence Kennedy. And Clarence is a strong guy, don't get me wrong. Someone to say, "Yeah, but his absolute numbers are slightly better." Yeah, and that's why we use the Wilks calculator. Jamie has a 521 raw, no wraps Wilks. 521 in competition. And the reason I brought up Jamie is because Jamie follows extremely meat-heavy diet and broke world records in his second powerlifting meet ever. Because powerlifting was not his sport. He used to joke and say, "Powerlifting's a joke, and I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to go compete in it." It's a joke. Came number 2 in his class on his first meet. And then needed a little practice, so he decided to put on a belt, because he did that without a belt. Then he threw on a belt and broke the 181 world records with like a 521 Wilks. Okay, Clarence can't pull without straps. Okay, so I don't care. I don't count your strap deadlift. I don't care. And I'm not saying Clarence isn't brutally strong, but it doesn't count. But he did a little mock meet, I think, within the last year or two. And counting his strapped deadlift, giving him credit for it, his Wilks was like 450. Wasn't it right? If you guys can go calculate it, I apologize if I missed that. I'm going to apologize if I missed that, but it was something in the 450 range. Now, that is impressive. That is impressive. Because if I were to walk into a meet right now, my Wilks would be low 400s. Right? You guys know what I lift, you know what I weigh, you know my age, because we plug age into the Wilks calculator too. I'd be in the lower 400s. So, I mean, Clarence would actually beat me, I think, by a good 20 points on a Wilks calculator right now. Right? If we both walked in and did a meet and he could pull without straps, he'd beat me by a good 20 points. He'd beat me on relative strength. Not just absolute, but relative. But he wouldn't beat Jamie on that. And it's not even close. When you're talking 50 or more pounds difference in Wilks class, like Wilks score, you are not even in the same category. So some people brought that up too, and I said, I'm like, you better go look at their numbers a little closer. And why? Because if, like the vegans are pointing out, well, Patrick is shorter, well, Jamie is shorter than Clarence, so he's going to weigh less. He's going to weigh less. Clarence is walking around about 235. Jamie has competed at 181. Okay? The Wilks is phenomenally different. Wilks is phenomenally different. If someone comes in and you only out squat them by 10 pounds and you weigh 50 pounds more than them, you're going to get crushed on those calculators. Okay? You're going to get crushed on them. It is what it is. But I will point that out, though, that was done with straps. We're talking about like a 70-point Wilks difference while being allowed straps for the lower Wilks. Okay? We're not in the same category. So I don't know why people felt the need to come in and bring that one up. But we'll apply the same rules to that we applied to Patrick versus Brian. We use the same measuring stick. Since they're in different weight classes and different heights, vastly different heights, because if they were similar heights, we would throw weight class out. We should, if we're going to compare, can the vegan diet build as much muscle tissue? Because that's where you get strength from. Strength comes from your muscle tissue. Well, then we have to normalize frame height. We've got to normalize height. So just like we would give Patrick, hey, yeah, we do need to do it by Wilks because he is shorter. So vegan diet or not, he's not going to be able to do as well. Fine, I'll agree with that. Let's give him that metric. And if we do that and we do the same cross-class comparison, we would have to compare someone like Jamie and Clarence in the same way. Now, all four of these guys are strong dudes, right? No one's taking that away from them. But the point here is that I've been making with all this, the vegan diet handicaps you as an athlete. It handicaps you. I'm morally and ethically opposed to it, but I'm also opposed to it from a coaching perspective and from a strength building perspective and athletic perspective. So I have multiple reasons to be against it. It just flat is worse for athletes. It makes things harder. It complicates things in a way and handicaps you in a way that you don't need for reasons that I don't believe are ethically sound anyways. Okay, so all the way around, it's a problem. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.